Hello and welcome to Magic Gathering Strat. I'm Binkaby and this will be limited lesson number 5, which will cover Mulligans. And to be frankly with you, this is a mess of a topic to talk about because there is no correct answer, there is no guide you can follow to always make the right decision every time, and it all depends on you, your deck, your opponent, the stakes, the potential of the hand, and a lot of other things. So I have dug up an M15 draft deck. I have a bunch of them here, so we're gonna take a look at some randoms. I haven't checked them out yet, so I will just click and see what it is. But we're gonna start talking about this deck because I think it was a pretty sweet one. We have all the cards that this deck needs. We have Unmake the Graves and Endless Obedience and Restock to get back the cards we mill, and we have 2 Zeta Wayfinders, but I had to fill them out with Necromancer's Assistant because I would rather have like 4 Zeta Wayfinders, but you can't have it all. We have an Ulcerate, Stab Wound, 2 Covenant of Bloods, a Flesh to Dust, pretty good removal suit. And I think this was, despite doing like 20 drafts on Magic Online, this was the only deck I think I won an 8-4 with. I had the worst run ever in M15, so I don't like the format, but let's say we had this deck. This is our deck. We wanna mill some cards and outvalue our opponent and finish off with a big Undergrowth Scavenger or a Siege Worm or something. In this deck, if we have a hand with like, let's just say this, some mulligan decisions are of course easier than others. If you have 7 spells, you're probably mulliganing, unless you play a constructed deck that is built to do that. If you have 7 lands, you're probably mulliganing too. 6 lands and 1 spell, becoming more borderline, but let's say we have 3 forests, 3 swamps, and an Unmake the Graves. I would mulligan that for sure. If we have 1 land, a Zeta Wayfinder and a couple of good spells, that's when things starts to get more borderline. So let's say we have that, a forest, Zeta Wayfinder, a 3-drop maybe, and some other stuff. Do you keep that hand? Well, it depends. First of all, are you on the play or on the draw? If you're on the draw, you have 2 draw steps to find a land, and we should statistically hit one. And the Zeta Wayfinder should give us a 3rd land. So on the draw I would maybe keep that hand. It all depends on the rest of the cards in the hand. Also, it depends on my opponent. Let's say he has a pretty fast deck, and I know that I have all the good cards I need. I have an Ulcerate and a Stab Wound in my hand, and I'd rather gamble on that hand that only needs like a land to function, instead of mulliganing to 6, where I might get 3 lands and 3 spells, but I get like a Witch's Familiar and a Cursed Spirit and an Unmake the Graves that doesn't interact with my opponent at all. So I would maybe keep that hand, maybe not. It depends. Let's say we have 4 lands, 2 forests, 2 swamps. We have an Undergrowth Scavenger, a Flesh to Dust, and an Endless Obedience. 4 lands, 3 spells. Usually I keep. I would mulligan that hand in a heartbeat. We're not doing anything until turn 4, and we can't even cast that. So our first spell, as it looks like from our opening hand, is a Flesh to Dust, and that is not a game-winning strategy. I would mulligan that. I would not keep that hand. Would I keep, let's say, 5 lands and 2 Zeta Wayfinders? Probably. Why? Well, because we have the engine that we need, and every card we draw that is like a Restock or Unmake the Graves, Endless Obedience, stuff like that, Undergrowth Scavenger will be so good. So we're turning on a big portion of our deck by keeping those. So I'll probably keep that hand. Let's continue. Let's take another random deck. Let's take this one. Not sure what it is. Let's update and sort. This looks like a Cons of Tarkir deck, and it looks pretty good, I have to say. pretty aggressive, Firehoof Cavalries, Valley Dashers, and we're topping it off with some black cards in Mardu Ascendancy, Mardu Charm, Utter End. 2 Heart Pierces, yeah, this deck is not real. This deck, for example, this is a pretty fine example. Let's say we have 4 lands, an Act of Treason, a War Shrieker, and a Canyon Lurkers in hand. Would you keep that? I would hesitate a lot to do that because we don't have a 2-drop. That's the main thing. We built this deck to be aggressive. We want a 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop if it's okay, or 1-drop, 2-drop, 2-drop or something to keep the pressure going. We don't have that much to win the late game. Although this deck has Ride Down 2 Arrow Storms that could act like reach, so it's possible. But I would hesitate a lot to keep that hand. Let's say we have a hand with just Plains Mountain, 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, 5-drop or something. Would you keep that hand even on the play? Yes, I would probably do that, because this deck will win a lot more games when it has 1-drop into 2-drop than it would if we don't have that. Well, we could miss our 3rd land, yeah we could, and that would be bad, but you have to weigh the risk versus reward. If you can have the possible best start and all you have to draw to keep it flowing is another land, then I would keep that hand. Let's say the hand would be 5 lands, 1-drop, 2-drop. That's a much more riskier keep than the 2-land hand. Because yes, we can play any spell we draw, but every land we draw, which we're bound to do pretty soon, is horrible. It's completely wasted. It's like missing a card. Because we have nothing that costs 6, we have nothing to do with it. Yeah, maybe we could go like Mardu Charm plus a Morph on turn 6, but that's not worth the land slot. It's not worth it. So I would rather keep a 2-lander with an aggressive curve than a 5-lander with an aggressive curve. For sure. No question about that. Let's continue. We take this deck. This looks like a Boros deck from M15. That's interesting. Alright, so this again is a pretty aggressive deck. But I think it had... No, it's not this deck. Oh, whatever. Pretty aggressive. We have a Triplicate Spirits. That's probably why I went into white at all. Because that's basically my only good white card. Constructing Sliver is pretty good though. We have a Lightning Strike, Inferno Fist. Yeah, it looks like a pretty aggressive deck again. Thundering Giants and stuff. But we have a bit more late game potential if we want it. This is the classic deck where I would like to keep 3 lands, 4 spells if I can. Because it will function pretty well on 4 lands at the tops. There's only 3 spells we can't cast on that. That's pretty good. Would I keep, let's say, 2 Forge Devils, 4 lands, and a Blast Firebolt? If I don't know my opponent, that's a pretty bad hand. I would probably not keep that. I would mulligan that. Would I keep 3 lands, a Plains, 2 Mountains, Forge Devils, Sungrace, Pegasus, and a Brawler's Plate? Yes, I would. That's a pretty good hand, for example. Let's keep going. Let's dig in here. There we have one. This looks like a cube. Yeah. Alright. Strangely enough, I don't have all the cards. Okay, so this was an aggressive black deck with a white splash for 2 Armageddons and a Sorin, and we had another Sorin and other options in the board. I chose to go with the new Sorin because the +1 ability would be so good in this deck. At least that was my thought. So in this deck, one of the things were, would I keep a hand without white? And yes, I would. I would keep a hand without white. Because I had only 3 spells that cost white and they're 4 drops, so that's okay. Would I keep like 4 lands in this deck? That's a stretch. I'm not sure if I would do that. Since I have Armageddons, maybe I would. It depends on the spells in my hand. Let's say I had 4 lands, a GT, a Nighthawk, and a Desecration Demon on the draw. I'm not sure if I would keep that. I need to be aggressive. That's what the deck is built to be. So probably not. Let's see if we have something other. This one maybe. This is a Vintage Masters draft. Cool. And I did like this deck, if I remember correctly. Yes, this is a Madness deck, and it has all the cards that it needs. Basically, we have 2 Arrogant Worms, we have a Roar of the Worm, we can discard Deep Analysis to play it for cheap, and we have 5 2-drop discard outlets. So pretty good. This is a more specific situation. Do you keep a hand without one of those? It would have to be a fantastic hand for me to keep it without one of those. Maybe like 3 lands, a Funeral Elves, a 3-drop, 4-drop, 5-drop, then I might keep it. But even then, I think it's a stretch. So in this deck, I would probably mulligan for a discard outlet. Would I keep a hand with discard outlets and no cards to discard? Yes, I would. That's a lot better, because those cards works on their own. Arrogant Worm as just a 4/4 trample for 5. It's decent, but not if you compare it to like Battle Screech or other broken cards that was in this set. So that's much more specific for this deck. Would I keep a 2-lander? Depends. That's a stretch in this deck as well, so maybe not. Let's see, what's the oldest deck I have? This looks like a Modern Masters deck. So interesting to revisit. Alright, is this a good deck? Looks like a blue-black control fairy deck or something. Alright, so in this deck, do you keep a hand with like Kukusho, Skeletal Vampire, Take Possession, and 4 lands? No. No chance. There's no way I'm keeping that hand. I got all the good late game cards, but I have no way to take me there. And if I draw like a land or a Perilous of Insight, I just lose the game. Not worth it. Would I keep like 5 lands, Pepper Smoke, Spellstudy Sprite? Yes, I would. That hand has a potential to get me where I want to be. And that's turn 6 basically. There's where I dominate the game. Would I keep a hand without creatures in this deck? Yes, for sure. No problem. I don't need my creatures. I'd be happy keeping like 4 lands, Pepper Smoke, Warren Weirding, and Logic Knot, and something else. No problem. This deck does not need the creatures early to win. They're just there for speed bumps until you just crush them with Skeletal Vampire or Kukusho. Maybe Riftwind Cloudscape can get there. Who knows? Let's take one more before we wrap this up. Let's take the second oldest deck. Oh, this is a Storm deck. A failed Storm deck. So this is what could happen when you're trying to play Storm in Vintage Masters. You end up without a Storm card, and you have to, in panic, snag a Death Grasp to have a win condition. I actually went to the finals with this deck, which is just absurd, but oh well. Turns out that making a gazillion mana and Death Grasp is usually good enough. If this got milled, I think I just lost. I think I just had to scoop. So in this deck, would I keep a 2-lander? Yes. That's no problem. I would keep that. Would I keep like a 5-lander? Yep, I would keep that too. This deck doesn't really care what it has. All it wants is to get a decent number of islands into play, survive up to turn X, where X is as late as possible, and then play a High Tide and start going off. Frantic Searches to untap and just hope to generate enough mana to Death Grasp them out. Would I keep, if I'm playing against like a black deck that I know has discard spells, would I keep a hand with Death Grasp? Probably not. I would actually probably mulligan that hand to not have the Death Grasp in hand. Because if I discard it, I lose the game. And that's pretty specific for this deck. It should have 2 Tendrils instead of the Death Grasp, or a Brain Freeze and a Tendrils or something. But it don't. It has Tyrant Choice instead, so this was a failed deck. But you end up with that sometimes too, and if you want to maximize the chances to win, you have to play accordingly. So hopefully I've got something out of this. It's so hard to discuss mulligans, and every situation is specific for the deck and the opponent. If I had this deck and I know my opponent had like a fast deck that wins in turn 4, I would probably keep like Swamp, 3 Dark Rituals, and some other stuff, just because that's my only chance to win if I have the God Draw or something. And if my God Draw includes just drawing lands, I would keep it. So yeah, I'm pretty sure you have a lot of questions because mulligans is horribly bad. So if you have an interesting scenario, please post a picture or describe it in the comments, and we will discuss them there. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll bring you more as soon as I can.